Mr. Speaker, I now yield 5 minutes to a distinguished member of the Rules Committee, the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse.
The gentleman is recognized.
First, I want to thank my friend, the gentleman from Alabama, for letting me participate in this very important debate today. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the rule, but specifically to voice my very strong support for one of the bills of the underlying legislation. That would be H.R. 3043, which is the Hydropower Policy Modernization Act of 2017. This legislation, which is sponsored and spearheaded by my good friend and fellow Washingtonian, Representative Kathy Morris Rogers, will improve the licensing process for the U.S. hydropower resources by promoting accountability as well as transparency, and by requiring greater cooperation among federal and state agencies, as well as reducing needless duplication of efforts. Mr. Speaker, I am a strong, steadfast supporter of hydropower. I admit that, which as America's first renewable electricity source has provided our country with low-cost, clean, reliable energy for over a century. In my own home state of Washington, nearly 70% of our energy is derived from hydropower. While there are still some misguided, extreme efforts to breach our dams and remove these critical sources of electric generation, I believe that we need to increase our use of clean and renewable resources by passing this, the Hydropower Policy Modernization Act. We can take a very major step in doing just that. Mr. Speaker, FERC, or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, serves as the lead agency to coordinate hydropower reviews and convene stakeholders to participate in a collaborative, transparent public proceeding. However, FERC lacks the authority to improve hydropower licensing processes, including the ability to resolve disputes among agencies and enforce scheduling deadlines. Far too often, it is those federal and state agencies, as well as other bureaucratic bodies, that stand in the way of moving these licensing efforts forward. In fact, in response to a House Energy and Commerce Committee subcommittee hearing, FERC reported that there are 26 cases, separate cases, where the Commission has finished its environmental review and is currently waiting for action to be completed by another agency before FERC can issue a decision on any particular project. Mr. Speaker, the licensing process for these projects should not be taking 10 years or more. Natural gas-fired facilities and other carbon-based energy sources are being approved in considerably less time. Meanwhile, less than 3% of the dams in this country produce electricity. So I will continue to support efforts to increase hydropower generation that will provide our country with reliable, stable, and clean energy. We can usher in a new era of U.S. energy independence derived from our very renewable energy source by streamlining these processes. So I urge all of my colleagues to support this rule, and particularly its underlying legislation, H.R. 3043, the Hydropower Policy Modernization Act of 2017. I want to thank Mr. Byrne, and also thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.